For your writing process, how did you go about? I'm pretty interested because me and a buddy of mine have started dabbling a little with the comic side. I normally write prose and novel stuff, but we have an idea for a comic book set in the world that I've created, and so we're kind of dabbling in that. I've never written a comic book before, so I'm kind of figuring that out. So, how does that process really look for you? Had you written comics before, or were you kind of figuring it out as you went?
I've done a lot of creative writing for whether it's for back in the day of college and all of that. It was sort of a favorite subject for me, and it actually evolved a little bit into the corporate work I did. I did a design for a website or built a website, and usually there's a lot of writing that comes with introductions. And so I find myself doing that type of stuff a lot. Um, but creative writing's always sort of been like a niche of mine. I've actually enjoyed it, and I've also done my fair share of reading my comics and odd books, fantasy a lot, and sci-fi. But when it comes to my writing process, I live with a character in my head probably for a month or two before I actually sit down and find the guts to actually put a little bit on paper. But besides eventually getting some sticky notes down in front of me, as soon as I actually kind of start rolling, I'm very fortunate enough that I can actually probably bash out a comic in about an evening or so.
Hmm.
But like I say, I spend a month or two before I actually sit down and do that. But a comic itself is only about, I imagine, 3 to 4 pages. And I'm very fortunate to work with a very good editor. So he's able to not only, I suppose, fix and correct some little scenes that work better with the artwork that needs to be developed, but he can as well step in and say, it would actually be really great if you introduced these scenes here. So
Hmm.
he's definitely been a great influence and help when it comes to adding that little bit of extra icing on the cake.
Hmm. And so, for those listening, maybe let's break down to exactly what you mean by comic book. There's graphic novels. There's what's the difference in like page lengths for those types of works?
Well, the way I've always experienced graphic novels, and then when it came to Marvel and such, is it's actually compiled of multiple comics. Usually, like say, one of my favorite series that is Marvel Age of Apocalypse. That's built up of 4 graphic novels, which is I think overall close to like 24, plus comics amongst all of those. So that's really what we're doing is we're saying, well, our series is 15, 16 comics, and we're going to take every 4 comics and basically make a graphic novel,
Hmm.
which Anderson really kind of calls it a book, but, in my language and your language, it's a graphic novel.
Yeah. Yeah, that Age of Apocalypse, actually, when I was much more heavily into going to my comic book store and actually buying comics and stuff, I was about that time, and that was a really great run of stories. I don't remember much of it, but I remember reading it, thinking, "Man, this is a really great run."
Yeah, no, it was sort of like back then that was like Marvel really stepping into the like dark side of things. People were like, "Whoa, Marvel! How can you write something like this?" So
Hmm.
I think us, wild fans were like, "Yeah, it's about time. This
Yeah,
is what we've been waiting for."
yeah, yeah. That was about the time I think they were also the Thor comic that had Gore the God Butcher in it. Um,
Mhm.
and that was a really great run too. And then when I saw the movie, I was like, "This is not as good as the comic book was at all."
And I've never been a Thor reader, but somehow I found myself reading that one. It's like, damn, these are great characters, especially Gore.
Yeah.
It was a completely different style of Thor. So yes, that was a fantastic one.